The casket gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights of the Manhattan funeral home. A polished mahogany monument to a life that had ended too soon, too messily. Whispers slithered through the crowd like cigarette smoke in a back-alley bar. "Gold digger," they hissed, eyes slicing toward the young man in the front row. His shoulders hunched as if the weight of their judgment could crush him. And then, from the shadows at the edge of the room, the figure rose, tall, unyielding, voice cracking like thunder over the Hudson. "You don't know a goddamn thing about love. Or him." Carter Hayes felt the air thicken. The kind of sticky summer humidity that clung to your skin even in November, as if the city itself was holding its breath. He was 28, with the kind of face that turned heads in Brooklyn dive bars, sharp cheekbones, hazel eyes that could melt steel when they smiled. But today they were shattered glass, reflecting back the accusing stares of Richard's family. Richard Langford, the man who'd been his husband for 3 years. The Silver Fox architect who'd built empires of glass and steel from the ground up, now lay silent in that box, felled by a heart attack at 52. No warning, no mercy, just gone, leaving Carter adrift in a sea of vultures disguised as mourners. The whispers had started the moment Carter walked in, his black tie slightly askew, the only imperfection in a sea of bespoke suits and pearl-clutching widows. Richard's sister, Evelyn, with her Botox-frozen smile and voice like a scalpel, had leaned into her husband's ear not 2 feet from Carter. "Can you believe he showed? That pretty little opportunist?" Sniffing around for his cut. Her words landed like punches to the gut, each one echoing the tabloid headlines from last year when Richard's fortune, tech investments, luxury condos in Tribeca, had made their quickie Vegas wedding fodder for the gossip mills. Trophy husband, they'd called him. Social climber. Carter hadn't responded then. Just gripped the edge of the pew until his knuckles whitened, the ache in his chest worse than any hangover from their last wild night at the Stonewall Inn. But now, as the officiant droned on about Richard's legacy of innovation and family values, the room's tension coiled tighter. Carter's mind flashed back, not to the opulent parties or the penthouse views, but to the quiet mornings in their loft. Richard's calloused hand tracing the tattoo on Carter's ribs, a faded ink of a phoenix he'd gotten at 19 after his own father's funeral. "You're my fire, kid," Richard would murmur, voice gravelly from too many whiskeys, pulling Carter close until the world outside faded. That was love, raw and unpolished, not the transaction these strangers painted it as. Yet here they were, pecking at his corpse like crows, convinced Carter had seduced his way into a fortune he never wanted. The officiant paused, inviting remembrances. Silence stretched, broken only by a muffled sob from Richard's mother in the back. Evelyn stood first, her heels clicking like Judgment Day on the marble floor. "Richard was a pillar," she began, voice honeyed venom. "A man who gave everything to his family, his community." And in his final years, her eyes flicked to Carter, cold as the East River in winter. He was led astray by influences that prized flash over substance. "We mourn not just my brother, but the legacy he deserved, one untainted by greed." The room murmured agreement, heads nodding like a jury delivering a verdict. Carter's throat burned. He wanted to scream that Richard had proposed on a whim after their first real fight, down on one knee in the rain outside a Chelsea gallery, promising forever because life's too short for regrets. "Baby." But the words stuck, choked by the grief that had hollowed him out since the paramedics wheeled Richard away that Tuesday night. Carter had been at the studio, sketching designs for his own fledgling graphic novel project, Superheroes with Broken Hearts, when the call came. But facing this inquisition, he felt exposed. His youth a crime in their eyes. Then, from the rear pew, a shadow detached itself. The man who stood was a stranger to most, broad-shouldered, mid-30s, with a jaw shadowed by stubble and eyes like storm clouds over the Atlantic. He wore a simple charcoal suit. No tie. Sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle from years hauling lumber on upstate construction sites. His name was Jax Harlan, though Carter knew him as the ghost in Richard's phone. The one who'd text late at night when Carter was asleep. The secret lover. The other man. Jax cleared his throat, and the room froze, every eye snapping to him like spotlights in an interrogation room. You think this is about money? Jax's voice boomed. Low and ragged, laced with that Queen's accent that made every word feel like a street fight. He stepped forward, ignoring Evelyn's gasp, his gaze locking onto Carter's with an intensity that made the younger man's pulse stutter. You call him a gold digger? While you sit here counting silver spoons and signing NDAs to keep your own skeletons buried. Richard Langford wasn't perfect. None of us are, but Carter? He was the only real thing in that man's life. Evelyn sputtered. Who the hell are you? Someone who loved him too, Jax shot back. Unflinching. Not for the penthouse or the private jets. For the nights he showed up at my door. Drunk and desperate. Because he couldn't face another empty bed without confessing how scared he was of the boardrooms. The bills. The way his heart was giving out long before it stopped. Richard told me everything. About you. Evelyn, how you'd sue the estate before the dirt settled if it meant one more zero in your trust fund. About the family that paraded him like a prize bull but never asked why he married a kid half his age. Carter's breath hitched. This was the secret, the one Richard had sworn him to keep. The affair that started as comfort after Richard's cancer scare 2 years back, when chemo had left him frail and furious. Jax had been the contractor on their vacation home in the Hamptons. A one-night stand that stretched into stolen weekends. Carter had found out by accident. A hotel receipt in Richard's wallet. And instead of rage, he'd felt pity for all three of them, tangled in a web of need and denial. It's not cheating if it's survival, Richard had whispered that night, pulling Carter into bed as if to anchor them both. They'd rebuilt from there. Fiercer? But the fracture lingered. The room erupted, Evelyn's husband lunging forward. Richard's cousins muttering about scandal, but Jax pressed on. Voice breaking now. Raw as an open wound. Carter didn't dig for gold. He dug for truth. When Richard was dying, I said it. He knew it was coming. Hit the tests because he couldn't bear your pity. He made Carter promise to fight for what was theirs. Not the money. The love. The messy, beautiful proof that two broken queers could build something in this godforsaken city. Carter stood then, legs shaking, the world tilting. Jax's eyes met his again, not with apology, but with a fierce, unspoken vow, the same one that had sparked between them 6 months ago, after Richard's death, in a dive bar where grief had turned to tentative hands under the table. It was betrayal wrapped in redemption, a secret that could shatter everything or set it free. As the chaos swelled, Carter realized this wasn't an ending. It was the spark. The funeral home's double doors burst open under the force of Evelyn's outrage, spilling the crowd into the drizzling Manhattan afternoon like ants from a disturbed hill. Umbrellas bloomed like black flowers, shielding the elite from the rain that pelted Carter's face like accusatory tears. He stumbled out last, Jax's hand steadying his elbow, a touch that burned through the wool of his jacket. Electric and forbidden. "You didn't have to do that," Carter murmured, voice lost in the honk of taxis and the wail of a distant siren. The city pulsed around them, indifferent to the unraveling of lives, its steel heart beating on. Jax's grip tightened, not possessive, but protective, like a lighthouse beam cutting through fog. "Yeah, I did. For him. For you. Up close." In the gray light, Jax looked worn, lines etched around his eyes from nights staring at ceilings, wondering if love was just another construction job, doomed to collapse. He'd met Richard on that Hamptons site 3 years ago, hammering beams while Richard sketched blueprints, their first kiss tasting of sawdust and bourbon under a harvest moon. It was supposed to be nothing, a release for a married man grappling with his sexuality in a world that still whispered predator at men like them. But Richard had come back, week after week, until Jax found himself falling for the vulnerability beneath the tycoon's armor. And Carter? Jax had watched from afar at first. A shadow in Richard's stories, the kid who made Richard laugh like he hadn't since his own coming out at 40. Post-divorce from the beard wife Evelyn had forced on him. When Richard confessed the affair to Carter, Jax braced for war. Instead, Carter had shown up at his Queens apartment one stormy night. Not with fists, but with a bottle of scotch and eyes full of storm clouds. "He loves you too," Carter had said simply, collapsing onto the worn leather couch. "And I get it. We're all just trying not to drown." That night, they talked until dawn about foster homes, Carter's, deadbeat dads, Jax's, the queer underground of New York that had saved them both. No sex, no drama. Just two men holding space for a ghost. But, weaving through the crowd outside, Jax pulled Carter into a narrow alley off Madison Avenue. The walls graffiti-tagged with faded rainbows, ironic nod to pride in the face of erasure. "They're circling the lawyers already," Jax said, lighting a cigarette with hands that trembled slightly. The smoke curled up, mingling with the rain. "Evelyn's got the will contested by morning. Claims undue influence. You'll need to fight dirty." Carter leaned against the brick, the cold seeping through his shirt, mirroring the chill in his veins. Fight? The word tasted like ash. He'd never wanted Richard's money, hell. He'd signed a prenup tighter than a chastity belt, pushed by Richard himself to prove it's us, not the zeros. Carter's own dreams were modest, illustrating books that captured the ache of hidden loves. Maybe opening a small studio in Bushwick. Richard had funded it quietly, a loan that became seed money for Carter's first exhibit. But love like theirs wasn't clean, it was laced with power imbalances. The older man's wallet a silent third in the bed. "I don't know if I can," Carter admitted, voice cracking. The hook of grief yanked harder now, pulling up memories like drowned bodies. Richard's laugh echoing in their kitchen as he burned pancakes. The way he'd trace Carter's scars, physical and not, with lips soft as forgiveness. Their wedding had been a defiant middle finger to the world, Vegas neon. Elvis impersonator. Rings exchanged under fireworks. "I do," Richard had said, eyes shining. "Because you're the plot twist I never saw coming." But the secret with Jax had festered. A quiet betrayal that Carter forgave because Richard's fear of losing him was greater than any lie. Or so he'd told himself. Jax exhaled smoke, stepping closer until their breaths mingled. You think running fixes this? Hiding like I did for years. His voice dropped, laced with the regret of a man who'd buried his own heart under layers of flannel and denial. Jax had grown up in a trailer park off the Belt Parkway. Dad a drunk cop who beat the gay out of him with fists and Bible verses until Jax fled at 17. Construction was his armor, building things that lasted, unlike the flings that crumbled. Richard had cracked that shell. But Carter? Carter was the flood. The alley's intimacy shattered as Evelyn's voice pierced the rain. Carter! You can't just slink away like a thief. She stormed toward them, her designer trench coat flapping like bat wings. Husband in tow with a phone already dialing attorneys. Behind her, the family clustered, cousins with iPads out, aunts dabbing eyes with monogrammed handkerchiefs. That man's lies don't change facts. Richard was manipulated. Vulnerable. And you, her finger jabbed at Carter. You're the snake oil salesman who peddled comfort for cash. Jax laughed, bitter and bark-like. Lady, I make $60K framing houses. If I'm after gold, it's fools. He tossed the cigarette, grinding it under his boot. But you? I saw the emails Richard showed me, your loans from the company's slush fund. The offshore accounts. He covered for you because that's what family does. Or did. Until you turned it into a weapon. Evelyn's face paled, then flushed crimson. Slander. I'll have you both in court. Bring it, Carter interrupted, surprise flickering in his chest like a match struck in the dark. The words felt foreign, empowered, as if Jax's truth serum had finally loosened his tongue. He stepped forward, rain dripping from his lashes, meeting Evelyn's glare with the fire Richard had always seen in him. You want to drag this through tabloids? Fine. Let the world see how Richard's devoted sister bled him dry while he hid his heart from everyone but us. The word hung there. Inclusive. A bridge over the chasm. The confrontation hung suspended, rain drumming a tense rhythm on awnings overhead. Evelyn's husband tugged her arm, murmuring about damage control, and the crowd began to disperse, whispers evolving from judgment to scandalous intrigue. As they retreated, Jax turned to Carter, his hand lingering on the younger man's shoulder. That phoenix on your ribs? It's time to rise. Kid. Carter nodded, the ache shifting, not gone, but transmuted into something fiercer. Wasn't a straight line from meet cute to happily ever after. It was a demolition and rebuild, secrets unearthed like rebar in concrete. And in Jax's steady gaze, he glimpsed the blueprint for what came next. They emerged from the alley into the throng of midtown madness, shoulders brushing as they hailed a cab. The driver, a grizzled Queens vet with a rainbow sticker on the dash, glanced back. Rough day. Fellas. Carter slid in first, Jax following, their knees knocking in the tight space. You have no idea, Jax replied. And for the first time that day, Carter let out a breath that bordered on a laugh, small, ragged, but real. The cab lurched into traffic, weaving past yellow cabs and steaming manholes, the skyline a jagged promise of reinvention. Carter's phone buzzed, texts from friends, the gallery owner offering condolences, a lawyer Richard had on retainer pinging availability. But he ignored them, turning instead to Jax. Where to? My place is a war zone of memories. Jax's eyes softened, the storm clouds parting just enough. Mine. Bad takeout? And no ghosts. Booze? Not tonight. As the cab rattled over the Queensboro Bridge, the rain easing to a mist, Carter felt the hook of the day release its grip. Not freedom. Not yet, but possibility. The city lights blurred into streaks of gold. And in that moment, with Jax's warmth seeping through the space between them, Carter wondered if love's greatest betrayal wasn't the lie, but the fear of telling it. Jax's apartment was a third-floor walk-up in Astoria, the kind of place where the radiator clanged like a faulty heartbeat and the walls thrummed with the lives of Greek grandmas and immigrant baristas below. No penthouse polish here, just exposed brick scarred by water stains, a sagging couch piled with flannel shirts, and a kitchenette where the coffee pot gurgled eternal grounds. It smelled of pine cleaner and faint weed, a sanctuary carved from the chaos of blue-collar survival. Carter kicked off his sodden shoes in the entryway, socks squelching on the linoleum, and for the first time since the hospital fluorescence had seared his retinas, he felt the tension uncoil like a spring cut loose. Mi casa es su casa, Jaxiv. Shrugging off his jacket, revealing a faded Mets tee stretched across shoulders that spoke of hauling sheetrock through blizzards. He cracked open the fridge, pulling 2 IPAs, local craft, hoppy and bitter as the day, and handed one to Carter. No judgment. Punch a pillow. Whatever gets the poison out. Carter twisted the cap, foam bubbling over his fingers like overflowed emotion. He took a long pull, the cold bite grounding him as he sank onto the couch. The room was dimly lit by a single lamp, casting long shadows that danced with the flicker of a muted TV playing some Knicks rerun. Posters peeled at the edges, Springsteen in '78, a black and white shot of Stonewall rioters, a blueprint of the Brooklyn Bridge Jax had framed himself. It was lived in, authentic, a stark contrast to the sterile luxury of Richard's loft, where every surface gleamed with hired help's touch. They sat in companionable silence at first, the rain pattering against the fire escape like impatient fingers. Carter's mind replayed the funeral in loops, Evelyn's venom, the gasps rippling through the pews, Jax's voice slicing through it all like a welder's torch. "Why today?" he finally asked, voice hoarse. "Of all days, why blow it open now?" Jax leaned back, bottle dangling from his fingers, eyes fixed on a crack in the ceiling as if it held answers. "Because Richard asked me to." The words landed soft, but heavy, pulling Carter upright. "Last time I saw him, 2 weeks before. He was weak, couldn't keep water down, but he made me promise. If I go quick, don't let them bury Carter with me. Tell them the truth. All of it." Jax's jaw worked, a muscle ticking. He knew about the wolf fight. Knew Evelyn had been lawyering up since his last scare. Said you were too soft-hearted to swing back. That you'd let him walk all over you out of some misguided loyalty to family. Carter's chest tightened, a fresh wave crashing. Richard? Always the strategist? Plotting even from his deathbed. He told you that? About me? The beer soured on his tongue. What a joke. He'd stayed silent through the affair, through the late nights Richard spent at the office, because walking away felt like abandoning the man who'd pulled him from his own abyss. At 22, Carter had been a barista/artist, crashing on friends' couches after his foster mom OD'd, sketching his pain into pages that no one bought. Richard had wandered into that Williamsburg cafe, all salt and pepper charm and designer specs, ordering a flat white with a smile that disarmed. "You've got fire in those eyes," he'd said, tipping double. 6 months later, they were inseparable, Richard's stability a balm to Carter's chaos. But stability bred complacency, and complacency invited secrets. The affair with Jax had started innocently enough. Richard, post-chemo, seeking solace in the physicality of building something tangible. Lonely after a bad breakup, offering more than labor. When Carter discovered it, the betrayal stung like salt in fresh ink, but he swallowed it. "We're in this together," he told Richard, meaning the marriage, the life, the unspoken pact of queer survival in a city that chewed up vulnerability and spat out hashtags. Yet now, with Richard gone, that pact felt like chains. Jax shifted, his knee brushing Carter's, a spark, deliberate or not. "He wasn't wrong about you being soft. But that's not weakness. It's grace. Something he envied. Something He trailed off, rubbing the back of his neck, stubble rasping under his palm. The air thickened, charged with the unsaid. 6 months ago, after the funeral planning, grief had driven them here once before. Not then, but closeness. Jax's arm around Carter's shoulders as they sobbed over bootleg whiskey, confessions spilling like loose nails. "I loved him," Jax had admitted. "But seeing you two, it made me want what you had." The real shit. Carter set his bottle down, the clink echoing. "And now, with the truth out, what does that make us? Accomplices? Fools?" His hazel eyes searched Jax's face, tracing the map of laugh lines and worry furrows, the faint scar above his lip from a bar brawl defending a drag queen's honor. There was beauty in Jax's ruggedness, a quiet poetry that Richard's polished edges had lacked, a reminder that love didn't need a fortune to be profound. Jax leaned in, close enough that Carter caught the scent of rain and sandalwood soap. "It makes us survivors." And maybe, his hand found Carter's, calluses rough against smooth skin, a contrast that sent warmth pooling in Carter's gut. "Maybe more, if you want to try." Because, when it came, was tentative, a brush of lips tasting of hops and hesitation. But it deepened, Jax's free hand cupping Carter's jaw, thumb stroking the stubble he'd grown in grief's neglect. Carter melted into it, fingers threading through Jax's thick hair, pulling him closer until the world narrowed to the press of bodies, the shared rhythm of breaths quickening. It wasn't fireworks, it was embers reigniting, a slow burn forged in loss. They broke apart gasping, foreheads touching. "This feels like betrayal," Carter whispered, even as his body arched toward Jax's. "Or redemption," Jax countered, voice low. "Richard wanted this, for us to not waste the space he left." Thunder grumbled, a distant echo of the storm within. Carter pulled back, heart hammering. The will reading loomed tomorrow. Evelyn's claws sharpened. But here, in this unpretentious haven, with Jax's hands still in his, Carter glimpsed a future not defined by ghosts. He stood, tugging Jax up with him. "Show me your blueprints," he said, nodding to the drafting table in the corner, littered with sketches of sustainable homes, eco-villages for queer youth, safe houses disguised as lofts. Jax grinned. "That rare crooked smile that lit his face like dawn over the East River. As he spread the papers, explaining load-bearing walls and green roofs with the passion of a poet, Carter sketched idly on a napkin a rough outline of two figures rising from ashes. It was the start of his next chapter, inked in vulnerability. But dawn brought reckoning. The next morning, over burnt toast and black coffee, Carter's phone exploded, voicemails from Evelyn's attorney, texts from Richard's executors citing irregularities in the marriage. They're freezing assets, the lawyer barked when Carter called back, claiming fraud. That Harlan guy's testimony? It's dynamite for them. Adultery voids prenups in New York. Jax cursed, slamming his mug down. I didn't think. No, Carter cut in, steel in his spine. You gave me truth. Now I fight with it. He dressed quickly, the suit from yesterday rumpled but resolute. Jax drove him to the lawyer's office in Midtown. The truck's cab filled with tense silence broken only by classic rock anthems, Springsteen wailing about highways and broken dreams. The meeting was a battlefield, Evelyn across the table, pearls strung like ammunition, her attorney a shark in pinstripes. Mr. Hayes, the man sneered, sliding documents across polished oak. Your union was a sham. Mr. Langford's diminished capacity. Bullshit, Carter snapped, voice steady for the first time. He met Evelyn's eyes, unflinching. Richard was sharper than all of us till the end. He married me because he loved me. Messily, imperfectly, but real. And if you want to drag his secrets into court, drag mine too. The nights he cried over your betrayals, the money you siphoned while he built your safety net. Evelyn recoiled, but her attorney pressed. And this Harlan? Your lover's lover? It proves coercion. Who'd insisted on waiting outside. Burst in then, uninvited, unapologetic. Prove what you want. But know this, Richard's real will, the one he recorded with a notary upstate, away from your spies, leaves the bulk to Carter. Not for greed. For legacy. The foundation for queer artists, run by him. And me? I'm just the guy who loved him enough to honor it. The room stilled. Evelyn's face crumpled. Not in defeat, but dawning horror, the realization that her brother's heart had always beat for truths she'd ignored. What? She whispered. Carter slid a USB drive across the table, Richard's video will. Voice frail but clear. To Evelyn, forgive me for choosing love over legacy. To Carter, build what I couldn't. To Jax, thank you for the fire. Tears welled, unbidden, as Evelyn watched, the fight draining from her like air from a punctured tire. By afternoon, the assets thawed. Evelyn signed a truce, half the estate to the foundation, the rest split quietly, no headlines. As Carter and Jax walked out into the crisp November sun, the city shimmered with possibility, skyscrapers like sentinels guarding new beginnings. That night, back in Astoria, they made love, not as rebound, but as reclamation. Jax's hands mapped Carter's body like a site survey. Reverent? Finding the phoenix and igniting it. You're not a digger, he murmured against Carter's skin. You're a builder, Carter arched, gasping, the world remade in gasps and grips. He thought, was the ultimate blueprint, flawed, enduring, defiantly human. Months blurred into the relentless churn of New York seasons, Thanksgiving's forced cheer giving way to Christmas lights strung like fragile hopes across brownstone stoops. The foundation launched in spring. A modest space in the meatpacking district rechristened Langford Flames, dedicated to queer artists who'd clawed their way from the margins. Carter's graphic novel, Ashes and Arcs, debuted there first, a tale of a young hero navigating betrayal and rebirth, inked with the raw strokes of his grief. Critics called it a gut-punch elegy for hidden hearts, and for once, the praise didn't feel like pity. Jax became its unofficial carpenter, retrofitting the gallery with reclaimed wood beams that whispered of resilience. Their lives intertwined without fanfare, no Vegas elopement, no tabloid splash. Weekends were spent at flea markets in Brooklyn, haggling over vintage typewriters for Carter's sketches, or upstate hikes where Jax taught him to identify maples by their bark, grounding the abstract in the tangible. Intimacy built slowly, lazy Sundays with Jax's head in Carter's lap, fingers combing through dark waves as Carter read aloud from dog-eared Ginsberg, stolen kisses in construction trailers, tasting of sawdust and sweat. But scars don't fade, they texture. Evelyn's truce held, but her visits to the foundation were laced with barbed wire. Richard would hate the budget overruns, she'd snipe, even as she donated anonymized checks. Carter forgave her, inch by inch, over coffee dates where she'd admit, haltingly, her own regrets, a youth spent closeted in Ivy League closets, marrying for cover, resenting Richard's freedom. I called you gold digger because I envied what you mined, his real self. It was progress, fragile as a first bloom, but human. The real fracture came in July. Heat wave thick as guilt, when a letter arrived, hand-delivered, postmarked from Richard's Old Hamptons estate. A key and a note in his looping script, for the attic. Burn if you must. Love always. Carter's hands shook as he drove out alone. Jax set a sight in the Bronx. The house loomed, a modernist relic of glass and grief, shuttered since the sale fell through amid the Wilmess. Up in the attic, dust motes danced in slanted light, revealing boxes labeled memories, do not open till I'm gone. He pried the first, photos. Yellowed, Richard at 20. Awkward in bell-bottoms at a pride march, letters from lovers lost to AIDS in the 80s. Words like, fight on, scrawled in fading blue ink. Deeper, the vernal. Spine cracked. Entries spilling secrets Carter had half suspected. Carter's too young for my baggage. Jax understands the shadows. Good. What have I done? The words blurred with tears, betrayal revisited. Not as wound, but as context. Richard hadn't chosen between them, he'd clung to both. Terrified of solitude in a world that still doled out fag, like candy to bigots. The final box, a video cassette, labeled for the lovers. Carter lugged it to the city, screening it that night in the foundation's back room. Jax beside him on a folding chair. Richard's face filled the grainy screen. Gaunt but grinning. Filmed months before the end. If you're watching, I'm dust. Means you lived on. He leaned into the camera. Voice a rumble. Carter. My phoenix, fly. Don't let my mess clip your wings. My anchor, steady the ship. And together, if the stars align, build something unbreakable. I couldn't, but you. You can. The tape ended with a wink, the screen flickering to black. Jax pulled Carter close. arms a bulwark against the sob that racked him. He knew, Carter choked. About us. Wanted this. Jax kissed his temple. Salt mingling with stubble. Then let's honor it. No secrets this time. The high of revelation crashed into conflict weeks later. At the Foundation's first gala, a swanky affair in a Soho loft. Donors in tuxes mingling with street artists in ripped jeans. Evelyn arrived tipsy, champagne flute in hand, cornering Carter amid the string quartet's mournful cello. This Phoenix nonsense, she slurred, breath sour. It's a farce. Richard's money propping up your little fantasies? He'd roll in his grave. Overhearing from the bar. Stepped in like a shadow detaching. Or applaud. Ever think of that? His tone was even, but eyes blazed. The room hushed. Conversations dying as Evelyn whirled. You, she spat. The secret that poisoned him. I read the journals, after you forced my hand. He was torn apart, thanks to your indiscretions. Carter froze. The accusation a blade twist. Indiscretions? It reframed their triad as toxicity, Richard as victim. Guess whispered. Phones subtly angling for footage, the modern scarlet letter. Jax's fists clenched. We didn't poison him. We loved him, fully. Something you never bothered with. Evelyn laughed. Brittle. You call sneaking around love? I was his blood. You were distractions. The gala teetered on implosion. Donors shifting uncomfortably. Carter's heart pounded. The old hook yanking. Run. Let the vultures win. But Jax's hand found his under the table. Grounding. Enough, Carter said. Voice cutting through the din. He stood, pulling Jax up with him, facing Evelyn with the clarity of Phoenix fire. Blood doesn't buy truth. Evelyn. Richard hid from you because you built walls, not bridges. We were his cracks of light. And this, he gestured to the room, art on walls, queer youth pitching ideas, laughter amid the string lights. This is his legacy. Ours. Take your checks and your judgments, fund something that heals, or walk. Silence blanketed, then applause, scattered at first, swelling from the artists who'd found home here. Evelyn's face crumpled, flute shattering on marble as she fled into the night. The gallery focused, toasts raised to Richard, to reinvention. In the aftermath, Carter and Jax walked the high line at midnight, city lights a constellation below. You were magnificent, Jax murmured, arms slung around Carter's waist. We were. Carter leaned in, kissing him slow, deep, the taste of champagne and courage. No more shadows, Jax nodded, pulling a small box from his pocket, not a ring, but a key, etched with a tiny phoenix. To the new place. Bushwick Co-op. Dulof's. Your studio. My workshop. Build with me? Carter's yes was a vow, sealed in the humid dark. By fall, the co-op bloomed, walls splashed with Carter's murals, shelves groaning under Jax's tools. The foundation thrived. Evelyn's donations steady now. Laced with tentative letters, I'm learning. Brother. Ashes and Arcs hit bestseller lists. Its sequel brewing with Jax as muse, a builder with storm eyes. Mending a hero's heart. One crisp October eve, atop their roof deck, Cities sprawl glittering like scattered gold. Carter raised a toast with craft beer. To Richard, for the fire. Jack's clinked bottles. Eyes soft. To us, for the forge. Carter knew. Wasn't gold to dig, but or to temper, fiery. But eternally remade. In Jax's embrace. Under stars pierced by skyscrapers. He burned brighter. Unapologetic. Alive.